Well, welcome to the Dana Seda podcast, which we are launching right now. Did not exist before a few minutes ago. My first guest is Mr. Calvin from the Mics Are Open podcast. So the interesting thing is that the Mics Are Open podcast is one of the oldest and biggest podcasts in Kenya. You're the all-time, I think, number one or number two?
Well, according to the most recent data that we have, this is maybe about 4 months ago, we were rated number one, Adele number two, and then we had the Sandwich podcast and Surviving Nairobi, all of those, right? So, of course, the numbers do change, but as of right now, yes. So, oldest, I've been doing podcasting for a while.
That's why you're the godfather.
Well, that's a good title. Right, so started in 2014. I used to do a podcast with a lady called Brenda Obath. We used to do something called the Unverified Podcast. That's where we started. So back in the day, podcasting was definitely way different. Like we look at the numbers right now, and you're like, okay, this is very different. Back when you'd get 100 episodes, and you'd just be like, okay, this is quite something, right? So now that has since grown to the point where when you tell someone I'm a podcaster, at least you're able to not have to educate them then and then. So you can have a conversation about it. So podcasting is one of those mediums that has grown so much. And I like the fact that now you're able to find a podcast on just about anything, right? So back in the day was, very specialist kind of topics. Right now, I like what a certain platform said maybe about a year or so ago. And they were like, hit us with whatever topic. We've got a podcast for it. So in that sense, it's grown and grown and grown. So yeah, shout out to the Mics Are Open and what we've been doing and we continue to do. But also, I think I like what James and them touched on, right? I think one of the things that we can't sleep on is the impact, right? In terms of because there's so many different particular conversations and disciplines you can talk about. I think people don't understand how impactful those conversations are. Like for us guys, whenever we drop an episode on Friday, there's always feedback, right? I think when you go back to communication, because I am a trained journalist, you're taught about the flow of communication. So like what you guys do in the studio, that is, encoding, right? Putting it out there and people using their smartphone computers to encode and listen to it, right? So communication is not achieved up until you've gotten feedback. So whenever we get the feedback, it's always very important. And that kind of keeps us going. We'll be able to know, okay, this particular conversation that we were having was impactful or people want to hear this and that and so on and so forth. So we've been doing that. So that's one of the things that I do. But other than that, I am the head of partnerships at Afropods. So at Afropods, we are a platform and we're about creating the biggest library for African stories on the planet, right? So we're based in Kenya. So that's a good thing. At least there's various platforms and what have you, but we're based over here. And when we talk about African stories, we know how deep African stories are, the genesis of it. I think everybody is able to understand. You've gone to Shags and your Shosho, those stories that you've been told. Or just you as an African, how like you'll be in the CBD, right? At like 6 o'clock and you can see all those small kamukunjis and guys are talking about, is it Baba, is it Ruto? It's so innate, right? So we're able to talk and give all of those stories. That is why when, the business model was being thought about Afropods, we decided that was what we wanted to create. Yeah.
So wait, for Afropods, you guys are trying to be the biggest podcast host on the continent and also distribution.
Correction. Not trying. We are creating the biggest library for African stories on the globe. Yes.
I think everyone in this room is a podcaster, by the way. And some are hosted in different platforms. But what would you say, in a nutshell, is some of the advantages of just being hosted by Afropods?
Well, Afropods is all about, we understand the business, right? I think as a podcaster, one of the many frustrations that you will have is trying to reach a platform that's on another continent, or even trying to explain to them, this is what my audience would like, or this is how I'd like to approach it, right? So with Afropods, the fact that, we're Africa-centric and we're here on the ground, we're able to even arrange for us to have a session with you. Say, for instance, like Dan will tell me, I want to meet you after your radio show. And I'm like, okay, do you have those good mandazis? I'll be there. at like 10:30, and we can have a conversation. And also, I think we need to really propel being African, right? As Africans, we understand African problems, African solutions, right? So it's not your typical one-size-fits-all kind of scenario. Us guys are able to tailor-make, a solution for you in terms of what you need. I think one of the things that we've been able to do as Afropods that has been very very good is the fact that we were able to partner with Nation Media, and we help them distribute all the various podcasts that they've had so far to the great success, 200,000, all of those different kind of streams, going and partnering with Nation Audio and actually building web players for them, distributing, because what we essentially are able to do as Afropods is we can distribute to the whole podcasting universe, right? So if you want people to listen on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all of those different kind of things, we send it all to all of them. Yeah.
I want to go back to the mics open just a little bit.
Yes.
What do you know now that you wish you knew at episode 1?
Wow. That's a very good question. Well, I think it's one of those things in hindsight where we've been able to realize that success would come, right? In the sense that there were many times when we do an episode, or we've been doing like episodes upon episodes, and we just feel, okay, when's going to be that point where we'll have a commercial break? Like, when I say commercial break, in the sense that the advertisers will be able to come and talk to us, right? So one of the things I'd say at that particular point, we were driven by passion, but we always thought, okay, we have to make this into something. But with what I know now, I definitely stick to the creative element. Like G and Andy and of course Neville like to all say, build it and they will come. So it's one of those things, especially for the guys in the audience who are starting off as a podcaster. It's one of those, globally, when you look at the data, a lot of people fall off at episode number 7. Because they've got into episode number 7, the data's not looking good, and they're like, oh, you know what, I've been doing this a while. I might as well just give up. Not the best. But if you're consistent, even if it's in learning how to play the guitar or any discipline, you will get to that point. So that's one of the things. I hope I answered it correctly.
I think you're almost there. I don't know if there's a mic in the audience. I know some guys have questions for Calvin.
Yes.
I can ask one while I wait for people to show their hands who has a question. But the other thing is, the mics are open is now making revenue. And you guys are how many episodes in?
Wow, 200 and maybe about 235 there. But pardon me if you listen or watch the mics are open. If I don't know
That's
that number,
crazy.
it's actually if you're one of those people who listens to the podcast every single time. You will always hear us say, what episode is this? Because we've lost count.
You've lost count.
But all we know is we have to do a Monday minisode. So we record a Monday minisode, which is basically us guys on a Monday catching up on what is happening.
Yeah.
Or like, say, for instance, something grand has happened and we want to get into it. And then we drop the main episode that goes out every Friday.
So that's 2 episodes a week. You've been doing it maybe 4 or 5 weeks, 4 or 5 years.
4
or 5 years, right?
No, it's been, we're now 3 years.
3 years?
Yes.
And 2 episodes a week?
2 episodes a week. Hopefully we'll have another one.
Yo.
Yeah.
That's the grind. I mean, just to get one episode out.
Yes.
Okay, so what episode, do you remember what episode you got like an ad, the first one?
Wow.
Is it past 100?
No, actually. It's before. So the first ad that we actually got on the podcast was actually a client who typically I'd not think would be on a podcast, right? So the first client we ever got was actually Prudential Insurance.
Who?
Prudential Insurance, an insurance company.
Oh my
Imagine
goodness.
So you'd think it would be the EABLs, the Safaricums of this world, but shout out to the marketing team at Prudential Insurance because they wanted us to have a conversation about financial literacy, right? So one of the things we did was demystify just what, you know, insurance. Insurance is a very boring topic. Let's not get it twisted, right? So we just had to change it and change the narrative at how, you know, you can go around getting your life insurance, your, you know, school, what do you call it? Like say for instance, you've got your kids and something happened to you, education policy, that's what I'm referring to. So we spun from that into telling guys, hey, here's an Excel sheet that you could use to, you know, put in whatever income that you're getting and you'll be able to balance it. And to date, we still have guys asking us for that Excel sheet. So
for real?
Yeah. So it's been one of those things. So like I was saying when I started, impact, right?
Yeah.
And to kind of, you know, tie it in, one of my colleagues over at Afropods, he's called Kevin Brown.
Yeah.
We're always talking.
We love Kevin over here.
We love Kevin.
Yeah,
right?
shout out to Kevin.
Yes, we're always talking about rinse, repeat, right? So just to go back to how to merge both, you know, Afropods and Mics Are Up and how we've been able to do it so easily. So you come up with a system and a process, right? So a process and then the system as to how you want to do it. So for us guys, when we're recording the Money Minisode, it will literally be a quick 20 minutes and we record it remotely, right? So everybody at their house, we're like, okay, cool, let's do this. Yeah. This is what we're talking about. Boom, boom, we're out. We already have the intro that's already always set. Yeah. The outro's already set. So all we have to do is, you know, fill the gap, right? And I think for us guys, it's easier, just to touch on what James said, radio is definitely a cousin of podcasting. So I've been doing radio for close to a decade. So I already know how to, this is what and what and what we're going to say. So the fact that we're all of us on radio has kind of been helpful. Yeah, so in that sense. So if you come up with the systems, kind of like what you're good at, you'll be able to figure it out very quick.